Oh, no binoculars with me today. Do you want to see them? Do you want to see them? So, yeah, we had one day that was a little bit nicer than this. Well, like less windy, but like this or windy than this doesn't make a difference. But the rape up.
All good. For this. I'm so glad I met her because she really put me off smoking. Like before I was like, yeah, it's not that bad. Now I'm like, dude, that's fucking nasty.
Sup, Corin, you see
Fucking Smith.
stinky fucking yellow toothed monster. Good, thanks, Jared. How are you doing, man? I can, yep. Can you hear me? Morning. No one there. I love how they use this fancy word, reboot. When it's like,
Bro, your tripod needs some Q20.
you know, it just needs to be loosened. Do you want it higher?
Yeah. A bit higher. That's about good.
Just about right.
Just about. Dude, I'm
Nocturnal sea donkeys.
about to do something that I never thought I'd do.
What's that?
Take off a layer.
I actually think I'm gonna sit over here. Can do the whole show seated here. I love a fucking seat, bro.
You love a seat.
Yeah. Does this look? It looks fine, eh?
Dude, that looks fucking.
Looks comfy, eh?
I should just take my shirt off and like get a bit of a tan.
Work it, work it.
Such a tiny trick there. Is that the one you were referring to?
Yeah. Good, thanks. How are you? Hope the delay is better now. We've got a windless day. Can you believe it? Wind free. Worryless. Sounds fantastic. Tristan spent the morning with the leopard, nothing new there.
All good.
Ego says all good. Jared, tell me quickly before you go, can you hear that little chick going, ew, ew, ew? Is it coming through? Happy days. I actually don't think those penguins didn't like that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a slash.
We have just finished. It's fine. I'll do selfie. That's what the fans want to see. And then I'm gonna walk across to the chicks. Enjoy. We have just set up here at a slightly different area from where we've come to you guys the last couple of days. There are a lot of penguins molting down here. There's penguins in the rock pool swimming around. And here's our camera gear. Possibly the most exciting thing is these little two guys. If you listen carefully, you can hear them asking for food. Super excited to show you guys what's going on here on the nests and down by the beach. What a beautiful day. Set up here at a slightly different area from where we've come to you guys the last couple of days. There are a lot of penguins molting down here. There's penguins in the rock pool swimming around. And here's our camera gear. Possibly the most exciting thing is these little two guys. It is a beautiful day here at Stony Point. We've set up in a slightly different space today to have a look at some of these penguins that are molting, and these two little dudes over here super cute, just outside their nest, making use of the shade that the sign's giving them. So super excited to show this to you guys today. A beautiful day here at Stony Point. We've set up in a slightly different space today to have just set up here at a slightly different area from where we've come to you guys the last couple of days. There are a lot of penguins molting down here. There's penguins in the rock pool swimming around. And we have our camera here, possibly the most exciting thing is these little two guys.
That's like the longest I've ever walked to. So, kind of want to move a little bit this way. You know
So,
what, dude? I think you want to take me this way. I'll just take the camera off
okay.
and do that without too much of a disturbance. Boom. Check easy.
Okay. We just need to be careful with these two because I don't know what their story is, bro. They're going on an adventure. That parent doesn't seem too stoked. The parent doesn't want to come out because we're...
They look so soft.
Can you see how it's herding them back into the nest?
So they're kind of like tame and chill for the same reasons that dodos were tame and chill.
I don't know, bro. Like, well, yes. But at the same time, like, that parent's quite nervous of us.
Compared to any other animals that evolved with us around.
Yeah.
You just got like in your that eye, you got a little bit of like sleep or something.
I keep forgetting to do my hair and makeup because I'm going on TV. in the morning.
Just like on the corner of. There you go. Just do it once more. You moved it, but you didn't get it out. Yeah. Actually, there is still a little.
On this side.
Yeah. There you go.
So there's no real molting penguins here that I can see.
So what was the brief that you got for the behind the scenes stuff?
It's just we want BTS for Instagram. What you doing? Set up.
So what do we call this spot? Rock pool. Or jacuzzi.
I was just thinking that. Jacuzzi Beach. So there are two penguins that are molting there.
Why don't we call it the resort? Penguin resort. Because like they got their little spa, they're preening, they got their tanning bars, they got their jacuzzi, health forest.
We call it Penguin Central, bro.
Penguin?
Central.
Penguin Central. So that penguin's not having a good time.
Which one?
This one.
That's lying there with its leg out funny.
No, the one that's struggling to get through the rocks.
Have those two. Oh, they're still standing on the edge there. Let's start on this side for our introduction. Start on that little pool where they're fluffing around. Penguin Pond. No.
I still kind of like jacuzzi.
So it's such a tongue twister, bro. Penguin Jacuzzi. Penguin Party. Penguin Central works pretty well because it's like birds molting, there's birds swimming, there's birds going to sea, there's birds in the cop forest, there's birds nesting. This is where it's at.
Having a proper little splash fest down there. Down there.
Yeah, I'll start on that little pool, bro. I reckon. Penguin Patrol. Do I look natural sitting here like this?
Where is it, man?
Can you see that I'm not sitting up straight? If I sit like this, better.
Like the more comfortable you are, the more natural you look. Like the more naturally you sit, the more natural you look.
Penguin Pool. There we go.
But should we have that many like penguin in the titles? Everything is penguin.
I mean, have you seen how many penguins there are?
What about party?
Penguin Party.
This is what the party's at.
Pool Party.
Yeah, pool party. That one lying between the rocks is not
Over there. All of the ones that are molting don't look. Good morning, Wild Earth, and welcome to a beautiful day here at Stony Point. We've had a wonderful morning already with Tristan with his leopard and those giraffes that we're necking now. So wonderful to get to experience that, get to see that, and something that's for me even more wonderful is that we get to spend time with these penguins here this morning. So we've positioned ourselves slightly differently. We've got a stunning day out here. There's hardly a breath of wind, and we have come down to this little pool. I call it a pool, it's a little rock pool. but it really is a favorite for these African penguins. You can see, and you will see as time goes on this morning, how many penguins we've got that are coming down and doing their morning ritual of going for a little bathe, but not having to actually get into the sea. Even though the sea is very calm this morning, not quite as calm and relaxing as that little rock pool is. A little bit like a jacuzzi. Me and Igor have been talking about a name for it for the last few minutes. In my opinion, we've got wonderful weather here today. We're going to send you off to see what the weather report says though. So we'll be back with you in just a moment. And there we have it. Beautiful sunny day here. And the most exciting thing I think for myself and Igor and myself, is that there's not much wind blowing. How lovely. My name is Devon. I'm going to be your naturalist at Stony Point, observing these penguins this morning. Like I said, we've got Igor behind the camera, and I'm really excited about this. This weather is absolutely magnificent. You can even see on the water on the ocean is like glassy. You can see those penguins a little bit further out at the back there. Now, if you've joined us for the last few days, you will undoubtedly know that the weather here is a little bit temperamental. Yesterday we were chatting about how we are located on the peninsula in the Western Cape, and being right at the point, it's quite exposed. It gets quite windy and can be quite unpleasant for a human experience. These penguins are well adapted, let's say. Cold water, cold weather, and quite different to cold weather, hot weather, which one needs special adaptation for. It's high temperature variation, a possibility for all outcomes. We see them in the water here now, looking very energized and very ready for the day. There's a lot of fluffing of feathers. You see those tails really moving around a lot, preening their feathers while they're in the water, using their flippers as they roll from side to side to sometimes preen air into their feathers, get rid of all the dirt and sand and dust and guano that they might have picked up in the last day or so on the beach. But I love to watch them walking down to the shore, waddle slowly, and as soon as they get into the water, there's this immediate like excitement and release of energy, which is so wonderful to see. A lot of kelp there we can see as well. Kelp is a ocean plant that grows on the shoreline and sometimes in water quite deep, and they've got the parts of the kelp that we can see are floating at the surface. They've actually got a sack of air at the head of the kelp, we call it. That means the kelp floats, but they are attached to the sea floor as well, so that they don't move and so that they stay in the same position. Just got another few birds making their way down here. I think they might have got a little bit of a fright when they first noticed us. One of them went tearing off slightly faster than what may have been safe to do so, down this rocky little embankment. And this embankment that they're walking down now is really what separates the inshore area, the ocean, from the vegetated sand dunes that are behind us here. We are going to spend a little bit of time now just listening, and I want you guys really to take in the sounds. We've got a whole host of sound that is coming to us this morning because we've got this gap in the wind. I want you to just listen, see what you can hear, and if you can hear any strange noises, I'd love to hear what you think they are. You can send them through to us, and we'll see how close your guesses were. We've got such a beautiful day here. You can see these penguins expertly negotiating the kelp forest. And this view that we've got now really epitomizes the Cape and the views and the oceanscape, or the ocean land fringe here in Cape Town. Rocky shores, kelp in the nearshore zone, and then in this background we can see those beautiful Kochelberg mountains as well. I'm just going to move my microphone a little bit here, closer to this noise that we can hear coming from behind us. And something quite exciting, something we've chatted about and really wanted to do, but because of things like the weather, because of things like when it gets really windy, we don't see so many of them out and about. We haven't been able to show you yet. So Igor's just grabbing the camera there, and we're going to direct you behind us now. Now, we've spoken a lot about how we get the adults that are molting, that are going to sea, that are just hanging out down on the shore side, and we've got the nests behind us. Now, where we've positioned ourselves today was quite strategic because we, when we were walking along the boardwalk this morning, managed to see that there were two very, very cute animals that we wanted to show you right over here. So right next to the boardwalk here, Igor, if you look down, there's a very, very cute little scene. How wonderful is that? We've spoken about chicks a lot. We've spoken about their downy, fluffy coat. And this is our very first African penguin chick that we're seeing and getting to bring to you live here from Stony Point. Now this chick it can't be more than 2 meters away from where we're standing on the boardwalk. The boardwalk's obviously here to protect these birds so that they can move between the shore and the rocks in their nests easily without interruption. And there's a little bit of netting which is casting an interesting shadow on this little chick. Now we say that these chicks, we were chatting about it yesterday, that they have 2 eggs. And interesting to note with African penguins is the chicks that they don't hatch on the same day, so they often hatch a few days apart, which means that one of the chicks is substantially larger than the other one. Now this chick down over here is the larger one. If you look very closely on its back, you'll see where it's already starting to lose some of its downy feathers. There's that like blue color that's coming up underneath. Now these chicks are affectionately referred to as blues once they've lost their downy coat of feathers. You can really see even with the soft breeze how it's, and here comes the parent now. So we saw this when we got here, this parent. Now the juvenile or the chick is very, very happy to come out and have a look at us and see and investigate what we are. But the parent's not too excited about the adventurous and curious nature of its chick. So I'm not sure if this is the mother or the father, but just coming out to see what's happening. Grant, we don't find the chicks are braying. So the braying happens between adults, and it's actually most common in the afternoons when penguins are returning from sea, and we know that they mate and are monogamous. There comes the parent just to usher this curious and adventurous chick back towards the nest again. So the nest is just under the bush. So I've stepped back away just so that they've got a little bit of space there. Anyway, Grant, like I was saying about the braying happens so that when the other partner is coming back from a day of spending on the ocean, a day at sea, it's able to locate its partner again. So they've got very sensitive hearing and pick up a very select frequency of wavelengths that we don't necessarily hear differences in, and they are able to locate their partner by the bray, which is super cool. Now if you look at the nest, the rest of this hill here, Eagle's just going to show you, you'll see a whole number of adults just hanging out here, enjoying the sun. And at the nest site, there are a few of them that are already seeking shade. You can see this little guy here, a very athletic rock lizard running through the frame there. But this is what we talk about, or what we mean when we're talking about the nest sites on the more vegetated inclines behind the beach. So lucky to be able to see these young chicks that were here now though. And the noise that I was cueing you all to look out for was, there we can just see the smaller of the two. So I was telling you that the one is bigger than the other. We saw the larger one, which was already starting to lose some of its downy coat. And there is the smaller of the two. Now, they were both out a little bit earlier before the mom came in, or the parent rather, came and chased them back in. Nathan, that's a good question, and it brings up an important aspect of, well, I suppose, an important consideration that penguins make when they're choosing a nesting site. Now, they are quite susceptible to temperature and water. So, I'm specifically referring to the nest sites. So, a nest site can't get too hot. If it gets too hot, the eggs will fail and the chicks won't survive. So it's important that it's cool, so a shady spot's a good spot. And it should be on a slope-ish, because if it gets wet and the chicks get wet, especially when they've got these downy feathers like you can see on this chick now, that doesn't dry easily and they can actually get very cold if they end up getting too wet and then again not survive. So important, and I think that's why we find them on these slopes, so that they don't pick up a whole lot of water. Shade's important, temperature regulation is important. These chicks really do struggle to and are not able to thermoregulate yet. The thermoregulation comes much later and eventually will only be able to happen when they're able to get into the seawater. So on days when it's very, very, very hot, the way that they manage to thermoregulate is actually by getting into the sea. Igor, I was just chatting about that chicken being a blue, and I can see up on the hill right here there's another chick who's just shuffling around a little bit. But the way the light's hitting it, very distinctly blue color coming through. These two juveniles, or they are still chicks, they're up here on the dune side, are still very young, but they have shed, from what I can see, almost all of their downy layers and their downy feathers. So they're probably approaching about 3 months old now. You can hear a little bit of braying happening behind us. How lovely. Hope you guys heard that. And it'll be soon that these two are no longer looked after in the nest. And what will happen then is they will go exploring. They'll head down to the beach on the coast behind us here. Oh, we've got some penguins coming in from the neighborhood behind. And then now, yeah, like I said, at 3 months start having to fend for themselves. They'll have to come down to the beach, and they've got their waterproof feathers already, so they'll start needing to go out to sea and explore. Igor, I see another chick out now. You might need to step across my side. Can you see them? We are just gonna take another kind of quiet piece of time here. I'm gonna stop talking for a little bit. Help Igor lock this off here, just to watch this parent and chick. See what's happening and going on. So cute. It's a tiny little bit of preening that the parent is doing there. Oh, and a little bit of begging that that young chick's doing now. You can see the way that it's shaking its head. If you listen very carefully, you'll hear a little whining noise. That is the chick saying, "Feed me, feed me, feed me." Quite a lot of brain commotion happening behind us. We are just looking at this nest from a slightly different angle. You can see the parent there sticking its head out of the bush, and like we were just chatting about the importance of temperature control for the nest, this parent and its partner have decided to build their nest and excavate their nest. Ooh, it's swelling up and then going down again. Decided to build their nest underneath this little shrub. Now the shrub will provide them with a lot of shade, and with this very soft sand you can see around here, it's relatively easy to excavate in certain areas. There are the hard rocks that occur around it. There's possibility to dig underneath the bush. So it works quite well, and we find penguins doing this quite often with quite a lot of these bushes on the slope here. You'll see lots of shrubbery. You will notice we are kind of going past this artificial nest box that has been placed here as well. Every now and again you'll see it in shot. Design of these boxes has changed quite a lot. Scientists have been working very hard to figure out the best design, and the reason that these nest boxes are important is because it's so essential that these African penguins nest and breed successfully. They are an endangered species in Cape Town and endemic to the South African coastline, so that means they don't occur anywhere else, and they have in the past, well, their breeding success rate is declining as the population shrinks. So quite concerning for scientists and naturalists like myself. There's a lot of hard work that's been going into that, and one of the things they've trialed and had great success with in some spaces actually are these artificial nest boxes. On the islands that penguins historically nested on, a big problem that they encountered was the harvesting of guano. So penguin droppings and dung and other seabird dung has got a high, well, let's put it this way, it's very fertile. So for the commercial use as a fertilizer, there is a use for it. But the penguins historically would dig into that guano and actually nest in the guano, so they would be able to excavate into that. Those islands are quite rocky and harsh otherwise, not much soil on them. And obviously when all of that guano was removed, they suddenly had nothing to dig into to build their nests in, which was a problem. Type of creation of guano like that can take hundreds of years to build up to a level that's suitable for excavating into. Just see this little chick here now. So this is not the same chick that we were looking at first. It's another one slightly further up the bank. Beautiful against that aloe that's growing just behind us. Aloe, an endemic plant, or a plant that we find here in the Western Cape and the Karoo. Succulent. It has lots of kind of medicinal properties and values, especially with skin care. But it's a very hardy plant. And grows in quite harsh environments like we have here on the coast of Betty's Bay. Lots of salt in the air. Strong winds. Look at that little flapping of those little flippers. So cute. Guys, I'm so stoked that we got to share this view of the nests to you today. Very weather dependent whether or not these chicks are going to be out and exploring in the early morning. I think with the temperatures today, it's not going to be something that carries on. As they get hotter, they will go back into the nests in the shade. Kelsey, that's a good question. And the reason it's a good question is because penguins historically don't nest on the mainland for that exact reason. And we watch them moving along the back of the dune here on land. They're not agile, they're not good at running away from things, they're not very fast. They've got a very sharp beak, but apart from that, they do struggle a little bit with predators. And I'm sure you would have noticed in the background some of the houses that are along the coast here. And because humans have inhabited this little section of coastline, it now means that predators like caracal and maybe even leopard can't come out of the mountains and down to, or I say can't, won't often come out of the mountains and down to the penguin colony. Which means that those two natural predators are suddenly not really accessing this space. It means that the penguins can make land here and forage, and nest. They forage at sea, obviously. We just see this chick, eagle, the smaller ones coming out on the left. We haven't really gotten to see that guy yet properly. Very adventurous, these two. And I know they're not standing side by side now, but really interesting to note the size difference. This one being much smaller than its sibling. It's now kind of starting to go under the boardwalk. And the one thing about this nest being so close to the boardwalk is there's a lot of shade. Almost, well, in my opinion, symbiotic relationship between the humans and the penguins. For a relationship to be symbiotic, it means that just tripping over that little branch there. You really see how clumsy these little guys are, but so incredibly cute. Frederick, that is an interesting question, and the answer is no. can't get wet now, so they don't have that waterproofing outer layer that adult penguins have, and that penguins that have, we say they've fledged when they've lost all of these under downy soft coat and grown their waterproof coat. So these penguins with this little fluffy down will actually not swim, and if they do swim, their body temperature will drop very rapidly. So as this little one stands now, the reason it's up here on the close to its nest is because it can't survive on the coast or in the water right now. I mentioned a little while ago that if they get wet, it's also a problem. If the nests fill up with water when it rains, it's an issue, and that's one of the reasons why they like to choose these slopes with quite a incline. The water will just run out of them. But also the sand is very porous. You can imagine that sand like this wouldn't hold water necessarily well, and it will drain very fast from this area. Just seeing the wind picking up now a little bit. This is bound to happen sooner or later. So the reason we came to this spot, or this spot is the right word, this morning, is because we wanted to show you something else actually, and not necessarily these chicks, which have been a wonderful and very exciting addition to our morning show this morning. But I think we're gonna just move across here. I'm gonna keep quiet for a little while, listen to the sounds of the sea while Igor moves the tripod. Lots and lots of penguins down by the penguin pool now. Jeepers, that is substantially more than we saw when we were here earlier, which is so cool. So many penguins. What can we do about the wind? It's Cape Town after all. These penguins really are so comical. You just kind of look left and right and up and down, and there's a penguin somewhere doing something funny, tripping over something, or chasing a mate, or braying like a donkey. Couple more moments just to take in the sounds here. So privileged actually to get this morning without wind, just to listen to some of the noises. I really hope that you heard that very high-pitched chirping that I kind of was hoping you'd pick up, that cheep, 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 cheep noise, and that was those chicks that we looked at a little while ago, or just now, that were begging for food. So that's the noise that they make when their parents are coming back to the nests. They're hungry. They're little growing chicks that are growing from an egg to a almost fully sized penguin in a matter of months. So they've got to eat a lot. And the other noise that we've been getting this morning has been a lot of braying, which has been so wonderful. That's the reason these penguins used to be called, or used to be known as jackass penguins, because they sound like donkeys when they call. And it's not something we've been able to get too much of in the last couple of days with the heavy winds we've experienced. Now, like I said a moment ago, the reason we came here was for something aside from the chicks, and because the chicks are so cute and sweet, we got completely sidetracked. But this beach, as well as being a bit of a highway for birds moving from the nest to the sea, is one of the locations where we found a lot of birds come to molt. Now, those chicks that we saw that were losing that downy coat are busy with their first molt, and these adults are busy with a molt much later on in their lives. Now, there's two individuals here that are quite clearly looking very bedraggled and fluffy and not so stoked. Very fluffed up and very stationary, so they actually are now busy losing a whole bunch of their feathers, and this is something that these African penguins will do once a year. So their kind of yearly life cycle of an adult penguin is to come back to the colony where you and your mate raise chicks, to potentially raise up to 3 clutches of chicks. So they'll lay 2 eggs, but they can lay 2, raise 2 chicks, lay another 2, raise another 2, lay 2, raise another 2, and potentially raise up to 6 chicks in a year. And that's, I mean, it's a lot of little penguins that we've got running around. The reason for that is like quite high mortality in their first few years of life. And after the adults are done with that, they will go on a much longer than usual foraging journey. So while the adults are raising their chicks, they are going out for a day at a time and then alternating parents, so that there's always one parent looking after the youngsters. And then quite differently, when they decide that they've had enough of looking after chicks, which will happen as it starts getting warmer into summertime now, they'll go this guy's just chewing on his flipper now, really trying to scratch. Can you imagine how itchy it is losing all of your feathers? And they'll go out then on a journey for a few weeks, maybe even up to a month, and the sole purpose of that is to gouge themselves on fish and get as absolutely fat and overweight as possible. And that is absolutely essential, because when they molt like this, very similarly to those chicks that have got that down, get in and out of the water. They don't have that waterproofing to protect them from the cold, and it will take about 3 weeks for them to lose all of those feathers and get a whole new set of feathers that are waterproof. So for about 21 days they'll have to hang out on the rocks here. When they make it land and start their molt, they look quite chubby, and very soon start looking bedraggled and grumpy. And you can see this guy, their coats don't look good, but that's because they're getting rid of their feathers. These feathers have served them well for a whole year, and it's time for a new coat. Eagle, I'm going to send you across quite far to another penguin that's molting down over there. These two are quite early on their moult, and the penguin we're going to send you across to is nearing the end of its molt, and you'll notice the feathers that are underneath. Sorry, I'm just going to have to direct Eagle. So there's that like patch of sand, and just behind the patch of sand there's the penguin that's on its got its head twisted back. Can you get it there? There we go. So this penguin now also busy with a molt, but much further along in the molting process. You can see it's lost most of the feathers on its back, and it's just, oh, you can even see the feathers kind of tearing off of it and flying away in the wind. So they go through this transition. Those two that we saw earlier on, this one's now nearing the end, maybe with a week or so left of the molt, if I had to take a guess. And then those new very dark feathers coming through underneath are a whole new set of feathers that'll last this individual for a full year. Keep it waterproof and warm and protected from the elephant. Protected from the elephants. Protected from the elements. Russell, penguins mate for life. Yes, they do. They are monogamous for the most part. Now, with a lot of animals, we find that even though they are monogamous, if one of the partners do perish, they will partner with another animal and pick a new mate. But we find with penguins that they are about 85% more successful if they pick a partner and stick with that exact same individual. So after this molt that we're now looking at, the adults go to sea, and they'll spend until the start of next year's breeding season. They'll be off foraging. They can travel really far. There's no need for them to come back to the colony every night. They can hang out at sea, spend days, weeks, months at sea, and it's a lot more effective for them and their partner, who have now separated, to come back to the same colony to meet up. Now you can imagine they don't have any way of communicating great distances over or at sea. So the easiest way for two penguins to meet up again is to come back to the same colony, and we actually find that they most often will even return to the same nest, which is quite wonderful. Yasim, no, we don't see any bald we don't see any bald penguins around. So that new set or new coat of feathers is busy growing out underneath the existing coat, and as a result, as the coat comes off, there's this layer of new feathers underneath that's actually pushing them out. You can imagine that if halfway through a molt a cold front came and whooped past the coast of South Africa, that a penguin that didn't have any feathers would be in a little bit of trouble in terms of its ability to keep warm. So although they won't go to sea, these feathers still, a little flap there, still provide a very important role in thermoregulation. We're still experiencing quite a low tide at this time in the morning, which has been quite wonderful. We're seeing a lot of the kelp exposed. This little rock pool that everyone's swimming around in, the penguin jacuzzi, is exposed. At high tide it'll be completely underwater. And if you look quite closely, you'll see this whole kind of stretch of rock here is got penguins dotted throughout. Norm, that is an interesting question, and the answer, as far as I know, is they don't eat kelp. Now, I don't know if you've got any pets at home or dogs or anything like that sometimes eat grass. We find with lots of predators they will occasionally consume organic material that's not meat. And so I'm not sure if there are any occasions or situations when penguins will eat things other than fish and things like octopus. They are most certainly fish eaters. Their favorite food being sardines. And the sardines, although we do find a lot of fish and animals and life in these kelp forests, sardines don't tend to occur here. They're a bit more of a pelagic species, and they occur in a little bit more open water. There's a bit of a little fight happening down there. And here's some braying. And so many penguins just come out of the water now. There's almost like a little channel in the kelp that I can see. And was wondering a little bit earlier if that, I mean, it's a slight gap in the kelp behind this group, behind the penguin pool. I was wondering if that had something to do with the regularity of penguins swimming in and out along this route. Although I think it might be more of a case of the penguins swim in and out of this route because the kelp's not there, rather than the kelp not being there because of the penguins coming in and out often. And as these waves come in, you'll see these penguins will have to shift further up the beach. Some more braying that's happening. And with the amount of penguins that are in a very small space on the rock on the right, there does seem to be a little bit of tension building. I've seen a couple birds tapping their bills. We can hear braying quite regularly as well coming from this area. But I mean, that's a pretty high penguin density on that on that rock. Very cool to see. So many African penguins. This little rock pool here kind of is like penguins and humans kind of doing the same thing. Nice days we go to the beach, all sit around the same little pool, everyone gets to swim in. Everyone gets to feel fresh. You can see lots of preening happening down here at the penguin pool, where everyone's hanging around. The tide's nice and low at the moment. This pool's exposed. There's not even really water washing into the pool anymore, so the tide is still going out. And every time I look away and look back, it feels like there's more penguins on the rocks down here, which is so cool. It's kind of like people in around tidal pools in Cape Town. As the day goes on, you go down early, there's not that many people there, and you come back every few hours and it just feels like there's more and more and more people. It's funny how we tend to congregate in groups, just like these penguins. Look how many of them there are. I mean, like, there's cheapers. I don't even know how many in frame there. What do you guys think? 15, 20, maybe 50 down on the rock? Actually, there's probably more down in this little bay in front of us. There's a whole lot on the right that are loafing, lying down on their bellies, doing their best sourdough impression. But there's a lot of preening. You'll see there's lots of beaks going in between feathers, straightening feathers out. We might find that in this group here with these adults there are a couple birds that are now finished breeding for the season, that might be getting ready to either go out and do that period of time where they will forage for a long time, or just before they come back to molt. They might be getting ready for that. There might even be some adults down there that have finished molting this year already. Bearing in mind that the main reason that these penguins kind of make landfall here and spend a lot of time here is because it's a good spot for them to be breeding from. You can still see that if we look a little bit further out to sea now, there's a little float of penguins out there, or raft. And as the tide turns, it will start filling in. It'll actually be quite interesting to, Eagle, can you imagine even doing like a time lapse of this exposed rock here as the tide comes in, and it would be like really cool with like a top-down view of how the clusters of penguins move as the water comes in. Because the dark rocks that we can see in front of us now, I mean, like the general high tide mark will come all the way up here. It'll come back at least sort of 6 or 7 meters. And these rocks that are slightly more white are the ones that don't always get wet. That question coming through regarding on where they would fight, whether it be in water and land, we find that when they're in the water, and especially earlier on in the morning when they're just getting into the water and just getting excited and swimming around, we do find that, well, I've observed at least, that there is quite a lot of pecking that happens at that time. Now, I'm sure in larger rafts out to sea there would also be a little bit of dominancy established, and on the rocks, obviously, when people are, or penguins are annoyed with one another and shifting around, there's a fair amount of aggression that gets shown. Especially with these penguins that are molting, they're not going to eat for 3 weeks. They're pretty grumpy. I suppose their behavior could be described as pretty grumpy. But for the most part, they are actually pretty relaxed with one another. They congregate in these colonies, obviously a lot safer doing that. And the fighting that we see is just more a little bit of a it's the last resort. They don't want to hurt each other. They're not fighting for mates, as we've said a few times. They mate almost for life. So it's just more a bit of a, you're in my space, man, like back off. And then someone moves, depending on who's stronger and who's not. And obviously they will get protective over their nest site as well. Have to fight hard to keep the best nest site. Just watching this guy move from in the water to out the water now, I think it's so wonderful how incredibly able they are in the water. Agile, quick. And then they get onto land and all of those abilities suddenly fade away. It's been really wonderful having you with us this morning. I hope that you have enjoyed this morning as much as we have. Like, just to summarize it, probably the most beautiful morning that we've had, Les. We've had the opportunity to see these guys down on the shore here molting. We've had the opportunity to see them interacting with that rock pool. We've had the opportunity to see those chicks, and not just those two, we saw that other chick as well. And now coming back, we're watching these molting and all of this wonderful scenes that are unfolding on this beautiful weather morning that we're having here at Stony Point. For the last few moments, I'm going to send you back across to watch the penguins for the last little while. It's been wonderful that you've decided to spend your morning with us. We're really grateful. We are going to be here again tomorrow morning, same time, same place. But from us and the team here at Stony Point, we hope you have a wonderful day.